Hey guys, welcome to Mad Backyard. So they just opened my pool back here, and it's a saltwater in-ground pool, and the guys just left, and I'm just going to kind of go through and show you what you need to do after they open your pool to get it ready to swim in. Let's go take a look. Alright guys, this is kind of what the water looks like here after they've opened the pool. You can see there's some leaves and junk at the bottom. It's pretty green, not horrible. I mean, we can see all the way to the bottom. First day, open it up, which is pretty good. As soon as we start kind of kicking up some stuff off the bottom and scraping down the sides, it's going to get kind of cloudy as all that stuff starts mixing in the water. But that's what we want, so that it kind of starts then going through the filter and getting filtered out of the water over the next couple weeks as we get the pool ready to actually swim in, okay? So right now there's a bunch of chlorine in the water that they poured in, liquid chlorine. They have to shock the pool when they first open it. You cannot get a pool clear with salt, okay? First of all, the water's so cold right now. It's about 50-something degrees out here. The saltwater generator doesn't even work until the water starts getting up, I think a little more into the 60s and 70s, that range. I have to go check and be sure, but that's kind of where we're at now. So I'm gonna take some time to kind of clean the leaves off the bottom, scrape down the sides a little bit, and then we'll come back and take a look. All right guys, you can see I went around and kind of scrubbed the sides of the pool, the bottom, the stairs, just trying to kick up all that algae and stuff that's going to just sit on the bottom and let it kind of circulate throughout the water so that the filter can get at it. Now during the normal time of the year during the season, we're going to backwash the filter just once a week, okay? But when you first open the pool, you got to backwash it at least once a day, sometimes 2 times a day if the water is really gunky. And that's going to clean that filter so that, you know, every couple hours you're getting more stuff building up in the filter, and you really don't want to let that go more than a day before you backwash it for about the first week. Now remember, this is going to be a 2-week process getting the pool ready. We just opened it today, okay? So I'm going to show you what the water looks like now that I've kind of kicked up some gunk off the sides and the steps. All right, so you can tell the water's a little cloudier now that we scrub some stuff off the sides. You can always look at the drains down at the bottom to get an idea how cloudy your water is and how clear it is, to see how easy it is to look at the holes in the drain. If they're looking clear, if they're looking cloudy, that gives you an idea kind of how the water is looking versus just trying to look at the liner, okay? So this is going to circulate here for the next few days, and the green is going to turn a little more gray from the liquid chlorine that was poured in. I tried to get as much stuff off the stairs and the walls and stuff as I could, so now that's kind of circulating throughout the water and it'll get picked up by the filter. All right guys, something else I'm going to show you I did is I took all the jets and I turned them facing up towards the surface of the water. Now when they come out to open your pool, they're going to take off the winterizing plugs and they're going to put the jet plugs on, but sometimes they put them on real quick and they don't always make sure they're always all pointed up. You want them pointed up towards the top of the pool because that's what keeps the water agitated, gets all the leaves and stuff headed towards the skimmer baskets instead of just kind of sitting and, you know, circulating on the top of the pool forever. So make sure all your jets are pointed up too when they come out to open your pool. So now that we've kind of gone around and cleaned up the steps, the sides a little bit, got some more of that algae and gunk circulating in the water so the filter can get at it. There's still a lot of stuff on the bottom here, leaves and debris and other things. You can use a manual vacuum if you want. I prefer to use a robotic vacuum. I've got the Prowler here, the Prowler 920. Make sure you've got your fall and winter filters in there. These are more of a mesh versus the summer ones are more of a paper for more like fine particulate. This is more for your coarse stuff like leaves and sticks and things that aren't going to tear this up. If you have the paper filters in there, they're just going to get torn up, and the filters are not cheap, okay? So make sure you got the winter ones in there. This is just going to pop in there. This goes down. Got it plugged in back by the house. Just want to put it in nice and easy. Let it slowly go in there, take on some water. All right. kind of let it slowly sink to the bottom. Now, if this were the normal time of year and I was running it, I would just let it run for 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever, and then just come empty it whenever, because it would only be a few things in there. Because there's so much junk on the bottom of the pool right now, I'm gonna let it run for about half an hour and then come back and check it, because I don't want it to get too filled up with nasty crap before I empty it. Okay. All right, so it's gonna take off that way, and you'll actually start to see when it's this nasty on the bottom, you'll start to see the tracks and stuff. You can kind of see that track where the blue liner, blackish blue liner versus the green algae it's picking up. So it's picking up a bunch of nasty crap, which is why I'm gonna come back in about half an hour and empty it out, and then we'll just kind of keep running that throughout the day. Not only does it pick up stuff off the bottom, but the nice thing is it's getting the water nice and agitated, getting all that stuff off the bottom so that it gets into the water and then the filter can get at it, which is what we want. The sooner this stuff gets off the bottom and the walls and the steps and everything else and runs through the filter, the sooner our water is gonna clear up. All right, guys, well, the Prowler is running there. I just want to talk about a couple things. So it's day one, okay? There's only so much we can do. There's only so much we really need to worry about day one right after they open the pool, okay? We checked to make sure there were no rips in the liner, made sure that the jets were pointing up, make sure everything's working, the pump's running. The pool is green to be expected. So it's going to take a day or two for that chlorine to kind of circulate through the system, start turning everything gray, and then it'll fall even more to the bottom at that point when all the organic matter dies. We're going to give it a few days for that chlorine to kind of circulate through the pool. When you open the pool, you have to use liquid chlorine. Like I said, you cannot use salt to disinfect the pool, okay? You got to shock it with a ton of chlorine right in the beginning, just kill everything that's in there, let it all fall to the bottom, vacuum it up, let that filter circulate everything through. That's how you're going to get your clear water. Once the water is mostly clean and that chlorine level starts to come down as you're backwashing the filter and adding more fresh water in, remember you lose water every time you backwash, so you're adding that fresh water, your chlorine level is going to come down, water temperature comes up, and that's when the chlorine generator can start doing its thing. We'll add the salt at that point, and at that point, that's when we'll start worrying about, pH, alkalinity, your stabilizer, all those things come at the end. All we care about right now is keeping that chlorine level high, cleaning the filter about twice a day, and running the vacuum, emptying it maybe every 30 minutes, just getting all that gunk that's stuck to the sides off and filtering through the water. So that's all we care about right now. When you go to open your pool, make sure you give yourself a couple weeks before you plan that first big pool party, because this is going to take a couple weeks, all right, to really get it to where it's clean and swimmable, especially if you got a mesh cover like I do, and more algae grows when you have a mesh cover versus a solid cover. Solid cover, maybe you can give yourself a week, but even that might be pushing it just a little bit. All right, guys, just wanted to go over one other thing. I wasn't here when they opened the pool. I assume they added shock and chlorine when they did, but you never know. Not saying anything bad, just might have never want to assume anything. If somebody made a mistake or an oversight when they're opening the pool, if they forgot to put it in, you don't want to be going through all this and have no chlorine in the pool, and then you're just circulating algae over and over again. All right, so I just did a chlorine test. I'll show you the ins and outs of the testing later on in the video, but I just did a quick chlorine test to make sure there really was a lot of chlorine in the water, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here. All right, so this is the chlorine test. I just took a sample of water from the pool, all right, filled it up in that bottle, poured it in here. You can see, like, normally during everyday swimming, we want that chlorine to be in that, 1.5 to 3.0 range, or 1.0 to 3.0 range. Kind of a light yellow. Right now it's a very dark amber, which probably means our chlorine's up around 10 or so, which is where we want it when it's shocked in the pool. So it's good to get a reading like this on day one. As we backwash the pool and add in fresh water, we'll be able to kind of see as the days go by. This is going to go from probably a dark amber to more of a medium yellow to light yellow, and that's how we'll know, okay, at that point, can we start using our salt generator? Do we need to add more liquid chlorine if it still hasn't cleared up enough? But it kind of gives you a baseline to go by. So I recommend taking a quick measurement when you first open the pool, just like I did. All right, so we just took the Prowler out of the water, and you can see it's already got some nasty gunk in there from just running for about really only like 20 minutes or so. So I'm gonna pull this out and hose it off and then put it back in. We're just gonna keep kind of repeating the process here every 20, 30 minutes. It should get a little better as we go, and it's picking up more and more stuff and getting it off the bottom. But that's gonna really help kind of get all that nasty stuff off the bottom here the first day, and let it circulate in the water or get hosed out if it gets caught in the filter like that. All right, you can see the Prowler's back doing its thing. It's just started its second run here. You can see it, water's getting a little more cloudy as more stuff's getting kicked up, which again is what we want, so they can cycle through the filter. While the Prowler's doing its thing, you can go around and kind of get the corners and the edges and kind of where the wall meets the meets the bottom, and all those little areas that the prowler's not as good at getting, and then kind of kick that stuff up to get it circulating in the water, or push it out more towards the flat land where the prowler can get to. All right, I just cleaned out the prowler for the second time. We're maybe 4 or 5 hours into the pool being open now after they shocked it, poured all the chlorine in when they came and opened it. And you can see actually the color is now going from, sun's out shining on it, which helps too, but it's really going more from a green to a cloudy whitish blue, which is what we want. That means the algae and organic matter and everything else is starting to die, and when it dies it turns more of a white milky color, and it's going to fall even faster to the bottom now at this rate. So again, just letting that all kind of circulate through the filter. I just came in and also emptied the skimmer baskets. There have been some more leaves and stuff that kind of accrued in there. You know, I'll give this a scrub down here in the next couple of days too, get it looking a little nicer. Just making sure no leaves and sticks and other stuff in there at this point. I'll have to kind of keep checking it as stuff falls into the water. Just want to show you, you know, focusing a lot on the pool here. I want to take a minute to kind of look at some of the equipment too, and what's going on over here. So this is where the water's coming back up after the skimmer basket. So think of the skimmer basket as kind of that first line of defense, keeping sticks and leaves and stuff out of these pipes. Well, then coming here to right before the pump. This is our pump right here. We've got another little skimmer basket here. It's getting a little full, so let's go ahead and clean him out so that we can have a fresh skimmer basket to keep our water running through. All right, so we're at our control panel here. I hope you guys can hear me. My neighbor's mowing his lawn, and it's a little loud with the pump here. We're gonna go ahead and turn this off, okay? So we're gonna go to, this is on the Pentair Easy Touch control system. You're gonna hit the mode button. You'll see right now it's on auto, all right? So we're gonna hit mode. That takes it to service, and you hear that pump kick off, okay? Now, if I go ahead and just open this up right now, it's gonna let a ton of air into this system, and I don't wanna do that. I wanna keep everything primed and nice and all the pipes full of water, because it's annoying if you get air in the pipes to get it back out eventually. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close these down. Now, don't do this until you've turned off your pump. If you close it while the pump's running, you can kill your pump and blow up your system. Not good, all right? So now that the pump's off, I'm gonna turn these both sides, so that now there's no water getting sucked this way and there's no water coming out this way, so we got a nice closed system. So when I go to open this, it's just gonna stay full of water and everything will stay nice and primed. All right, so you can see I just opened that up. I'm gonna pull this little skimmer basket out here. Because we closed down the valves, all the water stays in there, which is what we want, and everything stays primed. I'm gonna go rinse this out real quick, and then we'll put it back in. All right, we're gonna go and put this back in. It only goes in one way, all right? You got the open hole there for the intake of the water, and then the skimmer's on the other side, so it's catching everything as it goes in there. All right, put the lid back on nice and tight. And always, always, always remember to open your valves back up before you turn that pump back on, okay? You're gonna be in trouble. So now that this is back on, we can open these up, and we're not gonna let air into the system. Okay, these are open, this is on. And we'll come back to do the backwash on the filter itself, clean that out. But I just wanted to get the skimmer basket cleaned out because it was getting a little full. Yeah, you can see that pool water is 51 degrees, so that chlorine generator is not going to work at all until it gets up into the 60s at least. All right, you can see it's back on now. We kept it nice and primed, so it's full of water, and it's running through there. It's nice and cleaned out. And now we're just going to keep emptying that prowler every half hour or so as it fills up with algae and gunk, and just keep kind of rinse and repeat. Alright, so here we are. It's day 2. They opened the pool yesterday. So you can see that the water's gone more from a greenish to more of a cloudy white, and that says the algae have turned more from a green to a grayish color as they die off, which is what we want. So we're just going to kind of keep doing the same thing here, running the prowler, emptying it as it pulls stuff up off the bottom. And I'm gonna go backwash the filter here in a little bit. I did backwash it yesterday. I'm gonna backwash it here in a couple minutes, and I'll show you guys how I'm gonna do that. Keep the filter clean while it's cycling all this stuff through the water. Actually, before we backwash the filter, I decided I'm gonna add a little water. I backwashed it early this morning. We'd had a lot of rain last night, so I didn't have to add any water at that point, but it does drop it about maybe an inch or two every time you backwash the filter because you're running pool water back through and out the waste drain, so you're losing water every time. So in anticipation of that, I'm looking at my skimmer basket here, and I see it's kind of right at the middle. All right, and that's about as low as you really want to get it, because if you get too low, you're gonna start letting air in the lines and the skimmer baskets aren't gonna work as well. So I'm gonna just add a little water maybe for an hour, let that come up to about the 3/4 line. And then when I backwash, it'll come right back down where it was. I don't want to go crazy adding water because that dilutes the chlorine level in the pool. We want to keep that chlorine level nice and high, so it keeps killing all the organic matter in the water right now, but just a little bit in anticipation of backwashing later today. All right, guys, so we're on day 5 now, actually. Sorry, I missed a few days. We've had a lot of rain. It's been kind of yucky and windy out here, so there really wasn't much to film or do in the meantime. Been running the pump, circulating the chlorine through, been running the prowler, cleaning up the stuff off the bottom. I just changed the filters out from the mesh kind of spring and summer ones, that better for sticks and leaves and all the big stuff. Most of that's all picked up off the floor now, so I put in the paper filters, which are going to be a little better at kind of sifting through that fine, more particulate. It's going to pull off the bottom without just kicking it back into the water. So I'm going to show you the water here. It's looking a lot better. It's a lot more clear. I just did a chlorine test though, because I wanted to see where we were at with the initial shock that the guys put in when they opened the pool. So let me show that to you real quick. All right, so here's what we're getting testing the chlorine now. You can see we're barely, it's easier to tell when you look at a white background, but we're probably just kind of in that mid-range there, kind of a pale yellow. You'll remember before it was kind of a deep dark amber. It's meaning we were up probably close to 10 to 15 parts per million. Now we're probably down to about, 1 maybe at best, which isn't horrible when you're doing everyday maintenance to kind of be down that low, but pretty soon in the next day or two we're going to be down to 0, and we might have algae start growing back. We can't really use the chlorine generator yet because the water's still too cold, so I'm going to add a little bit of chlorine, liquid chlorine, to the pool to kind of keep that level up where I want it, kind of up above 3.0 for now, just to keep everything nice and sanitary. Once the water heats up, gets more into that 60-degree or higher range, we can start using the chlorine generator. I did kick the heater on just now to try to kind of help it along a little bit. We got a nice day today, tomorrow, the next day. Try to get that water temperature up. Then we can check the salt level, add some salt, and have the chlorine generator start doing some of the work for us, so we don't have to keep adding chlorine to the pool. But in the meantime, you really have to use liquid chlorine here in this early spring, or chlorine tabs in a dispenser. If you have one of those, you can use that as well to keep your chlorine level up after the initial shock wears off. All right, so like we said, day 5, the water's looking a little more clear now. I'll look at our drain covers here to get an idea. It's getting a lot easier to see the dots on there, a little more clear than it was a few days ago. So that's what we're looking for, to kind of know things are clearing up and the filter is working. So, like I said, I'm going to add some more liquid chlorine here. Got this Vertex pool shock we're going to be using. So just always read the ingredients on the back, kind of follow along. So like I said, we're at about 1.0 parts per million. Looking along here, I want to add about maybe 5 to 6 more parts per million, get it back up around 7. We're going to be getting some rain here in the next couple of days, and I want to stay ahead of it a little bit until I can start using that chlorine generator. So if I wanted to add 5 parts per million, that'd be 5 ounces per 1,000 gallons of water. This is a 20,000 gallon pool, so 5 times 20, that means I'd add 100 ounces of this to raise it 5 parts per million. So 1 gallon is 128 ounces. I'm going to kind of round that up, and we'll just put the whole thing in and kind of pour it in just gently around the edges of the pool. Make sure whenever you're dealing with liquid chlorine, you're wearing clothes you don't care about, and chemical-proof gloves, and eye protection as well, okay? Because you don't want any of this stuff touching your skin or good clothes or your eyes especially. So that's what we're going to do now. We added our chlorine to the pool, let that circulate a little while, check it again. It should be in the 6 to 7 parts per million range, which is not quite the shock level, but it's going to keep it nice and high to keep anything else from growing in the meantime until we can start using our chlorine generator. I also am going to add some of this HTH Super Clarifier. I used this last year and it worked pretty well. Whereas the chlorine kind of chemically gets at everything and kills all the organic matter in the water. Super Clarifier is going to kind of, sometimes called algicide or flocculant, you'll see it. It does more of a physical job. The Super Clarifier is going to kind of bind to the fine particulates in the water, make them a little bigger, make the filter catch them a little easier so they don't just keep going through over and over again. Gets rid of that kind of fine haze and cloudiness in the water. So again, whatever you're using, just follow the instructions really well. When you're using a chemical like this where it says, you know, add 4 ounces or so, don't add it directly to the water, kind of dilute it. And we're going to dilute ours in a bucket here. And you know, you always want to add chemicals to water, never add water to chemicals. That way you don't get splashback in your eyes or anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill this bucket up with some water. Then I'll add the right amount of the Super Clarifier in, kind of mix it around, and then we'll pour that in the perimeter of the pool, same as we did the chlorine. Alright guys, well that's about it for day 5 here. Added some more chlorine, added some clarifier to help clear up whatever remaining cloudiness we have. Gonna try to get the temperature up here in the next few days so we can start using the saltwater generator. At that point we can check how much salt's actually in the water, see how much salt we need to add, and then we'll add the salt from there and let the chlorine generator start doing the work for us. At that point we can start looking at pH and some of those other things. Besides that, I'm just gonna kind of keep scrubbing down the sides or the steps and anywhere else that the you know, stuff in the water starts falling down and collecting, and just letting that filter get at it and keep working. So again, day 5, we're almost about halfway there. I anticipate this taking about 2 weeks, maybe a little less if we're lucky and the weather cooperates with us, and go from there. Again, we're going to keep backwashing every day. Usually towards the end of the day, don't backwash right after you add a bunch of chemicals. You know, do it before you add the chemicals, so you're not just shooting your chemicals you put in right out the waste and wasting your money. So yeah, that's about it. All right, we're on day 7 now. It's been 1 week since they opened the pool, and I turned the pump off to kind of give you a better view of the bottom of the pool and how things are looking. So it's pretty clear looking towards the bottom. It actually looks a little fuzzier on the camera than it does in person, but looking at those holes on the drain, that's how you can tell how crystal clear the water is. Maybe it has a little ways to go, but it's a lot better than what it was when we opened it. It's good to turn the pump off every now and then so you can really see the bottom of the pool and areas, especially along the seams and stuff where you might have some dirt collecting. You can kind of see along the corner there where the wall meets the floor. You can see that kind of brown stuff that the robot hasn't really been getting, so we'll have to brush that out later, kind of let the robot get it on the flat surface a little more. Also, sometimes your other flat seams you'll see, especially over by the steps here where stuff collects, you can see some more gunk just kind of accumulating along the seam there. It kind of gets stuck in there, so just work that out with a brush, and you know, then the robot will be able to get it when it goes over it. I've been running this guy pretty much non-stop, emptying him once a day. We had a ton of rain yesterday, which is why I didn't film much. You can see the water level's a little high. We're gonna go ahead and backwash it here, and then salt level's pretty close to where it needs to be. The water temperature's up now to about 65 degrees, so the chlorinator's working, so we shouldn't have to add any more liquid chlorine. And so let's go backwash the filter, and then we'll go from there. All right, so like I said, we had a lot of rain yesterday. I'm gonna backwash some of the water out and also clean the filter at the same time. It's gonna lower the pool level. Always add your salt and chemicals and everything after you backwash, because there's no point in adding a bunch of stuff just to rinse it back out right after that. You know, add your stuff after you backwash and lower the pool levels. So I turned everything off before I started filming because you couldn't even hear back here. But on mine, you would just hit mode and go into service mode here. All right, and then I went ahead and closed the valves down. And the reason I do that is because then when I open up this pump skimmer basket housing, then I won't lose all my water and lose prime. Okay, so there's a little bit of gunk in there. I'm going to go ahead and open that up and hose that out and put it back in. The water level should stay up because, again, we closed off everything, so it's nice and closed now. Make sure to open these up, obviously, before you turn your pump back on. On my filter, it's just a handle you're going to move. So right now it's usually just set to filter. After I clean out the skimmer basket, we'll put that back on, close that up. We'll open up the valves, and then I'm going to turn this filter over to backwash here, which is on the back of it. That'll start sending the water through to clean out the filter, and then instead of sending it back into the pool, it's going to send it out the waste drain over there. Okay, and I'll show you in the back of the property where that empties out. too bad a shape. I cleaned this out yesterday, so it's not horrible, but just for demonstration purposes, you can see the water stays where it's at. If these weren't closed down, that water would immediately whoosh, would go right out of the pipes, and my pipes would be full of air. Not something you want. So anytime you do anything with the pump, turn it off and then make sure to close your valves down, and then don't forget to reopen them, obviously, before you turn everything back on. I'm gonna hose this off. All right, so on mine, this is where the water empties out near the storm drain at the back of the property here, just running underground. We're gonna let this run for about 2 minutes. It's gonna clean the filter real good and also lower the pool level a little bit. Been running for about 1.5 minutes. You wanna watch your water level, not let it get too low. So just looking at the skimmer basket window there. Okay, that screw is the center point, so I don't wanna go too much lower than that. We're gonna go ahead and stop the pump now. All right, that stopped the pump. We ran it for about 2 minutes. Cleaned out the filter. What that does is just get all the gunk out of there and cleans it out. Now all the sand is kind of, from what I'm told, up along the sides of the filter body there. We want to put it on the rinse cycle for about 30 minutes to kind of let that settle back down so it works better as a filter. So rinse right here. Gonna turn this clockwise now after the pump's off. Never turn that while the pump's on. Gonna come back over here, hit my preset again, and hit start. And we're just gonna do 30 seconds on rinse. Now you're gonna lose a little water in this section too, okay? Because the wastewater that it's rinsing it off with is also going out the back waste drain. All right, that's 30 seconds, so we're gonna stop. Let everything stop, pump stops before we mess with the handle. All right, now that it's stopped, I can move it back to filter. Okay, you hear that little gasket moving there. It's switching from the waste drain back to the return drain that goes back to the pool. It actually goes into the heater first, then it comes back and back to the pool. So mine, I'm not gonna start the pump again. That's just the manual one you use when you're backwashing, at least on my system. This Pentair is how the pool guys set it up for me. So I'm gonna put it back on auto. It's on service right now, meaning you don't control it from the panel, you control it from the pump itself. So I'm gonna hit this mode, service, timeout, back to auto. Okay, double checking once again that my valves are open and everything else before I start the pump. And that's it, that's how you backwash. All right guys, next thing we're gonna do is add a little more salt. Now I just checked it on my panel, it reads the salt level for me. Now that the chlorinator is working because the water's warm enough, it says it's about 3,050 parts per million. Pool guys told me for my system I should keep it between 2,900 and 3,150. Everybody's system is going to be a little different depending on the type of saltwater chlorine generator you have, so make sure to check your paperwork or talk to your pool company on what your level should be and exactly how to find that on your specific panel. I probably could leave it alone, but I want to show you for demonstration purposes how to add some salt to the pool. And I also know we're going to get a bunch more rain tonight. I just lowered the pool level. It's going to come back up, and that salt level is probably going to drop to like 2,900, 2,800 after all the rain tonight. I know from experience that adding one 40-pound bag of salt to my 20,000-gallon pool raises it up about 150 to 200 parts per million. So I'm gonna just add one bag. That'll kind of bring it up to that 3,100, 3,200 level. And I should be good even after all the rain. What we're gonna do is add it to the deep end. Okay, so over by the over by the drains over there. So we're gonna cut it open on the side, let it all fall towards the ground. We're gonna brush it gently in around the drains and kind of work it into the drains so that it gets sucked up by the system. And that way it gets kind of absorbed into the water as quick as possible. All right, so here's the salt at the bottom of the pool now. I like to cut it over the edge so I don't get a bunch of salt on the concrete. Just kind of let it fall out of the bag and then shake it out. Now we're gonna take our pool brush and just kind of gently sweep it over that drain there. It's gonna kind of suck the salt into the system and incorporate it into the water. This Clorox Pole Salt this year, and it's actually been my favorite salt I've used. You saw how fast it dissolved. It dissolves really quickly, gets sucked up by the drain really quickly and doesn't clump up and just kind of hang out. Some of the other salts I bought just take forever to brush them around and get them to dissolve. This stuff just seems to disappear almost immediately. So I got this at Walmart for about $6 a bag, which is a pretty good price. Usually Walmart has the best prices. That's here in 2022, but you know, it's kind of one of the best prices I've seen for a brand name salt that works really well. So I would recommend this Clorox pool salt for you. You'll notice on the back, I was just reading this too, it says that you want to get up to 3,500 ppm. Make sure to take note of what your chlorine generator actually requires and what your pool company actually recommends for the system they installed. You know, this is a salt company selling salt, so they want you to keep it high and use a lot of salt. So just make sure you're really using what's right for your system. I'm gonna get mine up to about 3,200 here, and that's what they told me is kind of the top end of the range for getting the chlorine generator to work well. All right, so end of day 7, we backwashed after the rain. We added some salt to the pool, and we cleaned out the pump skimmer basket when we backwashed. I'm gonna go around with the pool brush here in a minute and just kind of get up some dirt that we saw was kind of caked in with the seams of the liner there. Normally at this point, you know, I checked my chlorine level. It's really good. It's at 3.0 ppm, and I haven't added any liquid chlorine for a couple days. We just had a lot of rain, so I know my my chlorine generator is working pretty well and keeping up at this point. So just going to keep monitoring that and then adjust the percentages I use to keep it in that 1.0 to 3.0 parts per million range, and just keep my salt levels where they're supposed to be as well. So that's all we need to do for chlorine. Beyond that, the next thing you test for chlorine would be pH, your alkalinity, and then your stabilizer levels. Normally I'd start doing that today, start testing pH, but I know we're going to get a ton of rain here again tonight and probably the next day too. So there's no point in getting pH and everything exactly where you want it if you're just going to get a bunch of rain over the next couple of days. So we'll come back on day 8, day 9 and talk about pH, alkalinity, and then chlorine stabilization. Those are the second 3 things, and you do them in that order. I forget exactly if pH or alkalinity come first, but we'll talk about that. So I'll see you back here in a couple days, and as long as our chlorine or our salt levels are good and the chlorine generator's working, that's all that matters now. I'm gonna keep running the filter. I'm not gonna backwash it every day at this point. The water's pretty clean. Probably give it, you know, start getting on that once a week schedule because there's not too much gunk going through the filter at this point. So that's where we are. I'll see you in a couple days. All right, everybody, we're here on actually day 11, okay? Not because it's taken 11 days to get to this point with the pool, but just because we've had so much rain in the area the last few days, haven't been able to do too much as far as balancing the chemistry, which is kind of the final thing we want to do on the pool now. So, you know, we had it open, we backwashed the filter a bunch, got the water cleared up by shocking it. Now the water's warm enough that the saltwater chlorine generator is working. It's been working, so today we're gonna check all the chemistry, chlorine, pH, alkalinity, and stabilizer levels. Now pH is basically your acidity, okay? So if you remember back in school, you know, middle of the road pH, kind of what our human bodies are, is around 7.2 to 7.4. I know just from experience that my tap water here runs around 8.0, so my water is always a little high in pH, so I pretty much always use pH down. I'm never usually raising it up. So using pH down to bring the water down. Alkalinity then is, think of it more like a buffer, so that your pH levels aren't bouncing around so much with rain and sunlight and changes in climate and everything else. And people swimming in the pool changes pH, so that you get your pH dialed in, and then you add your alkalinity, get that up between 80 and 120 parts per million. We'll talk about that. And then last but not least is the stabilizer. It's chlorine stabilizer. Now, we talked way back in the beginning how UV light burns off chlorine in the pool. So that you're not always running to play catch up with the UV light constantly burning off chlorine in your pool, you add this stabilizer at the beginning, and usually about halfway again through the season, get it up to the level it's supposed to be, and that keeps the chlorine levels a little more stable in the pool, makes it harder for the UV light to burn it off. So once all those things are in play and your chlorine levels are right and the water's clear and the water's good temperature to swim, you're ready to swim. All right, so let's get to it. Okay, so first things first, we need to get a sample of water so we can do all our testing and kind of get a baseline and see where we're starting from. You can just use an empty bottle like this. Make sure you dip down in the water under the surface, kind of near where the jet's coming out. Don't get right on the top of the water because you're gonna have a lot of random stuff floating on the top. Get down maybe about 6 to 8 inches underwater, let it fill up. Okay, and then we're gonna go ahead and take that sample over to the table and start our testing. All right, so we've got our testing kit. I use the Pentair Rainbow all-in-one pool and spa testing kit, okay? Comes with one of all the chemicals you're going to need, testing jar, and then I just use a empty bottle here to get my water so I'm not running back and forth to the pool all the time. Okay, they give you the instructions right here, okay, when you buy the kit. So we're going to kind of run through these instructions and kind of what order you're supposed to do everything, all right? First thing we're going to test is the chlorine. So chlorine gets tested in this little cylinder here. So we're going to pour our sample in up to the line. Okay, and then we add 5 drops of the yellow solution. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can already see that turning yellow, which makes me happy because I know it's going to be good. Let's put the top on there and kind of give that a shake just to mix it up a little bit. Now you can see they give you the colors to compare to. It's kind of hard to see unless you hold it up in front of like a white background. I usually hold it up in front of the patio ground over there. So right now we're definitely good. Okay, it's right over that 3.0 mark. You can see that between 1.0 and 3.0 parts per million is where you want to be on chlorine. So that's the first thing you check. If that's wrong or that's off, nothing else really matters. You got to take care of that first because that's what's keeping your water clean and sanitary. I recommend having a notebook handy to keep track of all your readings and everything, and also keep track of what you did last time you checked and what your levels were last time you checked. Just keep some notes. You know, did I add salt to the pool? Did I backwash? What did I do last time? So that next time you go do work on the pool, you can remember, oh yeah, I did that last time. I added salt last time, or oh, I forgot to add salt last time, so I need to do some this time, okay? So chlorine, I'm just gonna put, we got a 3.0 right there, okay? I'm gonna rinse that out and then we'll talk about pH. All right, so with pH now, we're gonna use the larger vial and we're gonna fill it up to the solid line, okay? You can see it's marked pH, and then alkalinity is the smaller dashed line. So we're going to go ahead and fill this up with our pool water sample. Just to the dashed line there. Following the instructions, it says add 1 drop solution number 4 if the chlorine test was above 1.5, and it was. We were at 3.0. Okay, so you got to add 1 drop of solution number 4. So we'll do that. And mix by swirling, kind of swirl that around. Okay, the next one says add 5 drops of solution number 2 and mix by swirling. That's the red one, okay? 5 drop solution number 2. All right, throw the cap on there so we don't spill it. These testing liquids do stain, so be careful around your concrete and other things. I recommend. I made that mistake. Swirl it around. And again, it's going to be a kind of a color comparison test. So swirl around for a few seconds here and kind of see where we are. I know it's kind of tough to see on the camera, but we're probably not quite at that super purple 8.2, maybe kind of in between these top two. Again, it's high. Like I said, I know my water, my hose water, tap water, generally I tested it by itself, runs around 8.0, so it makes sense that that's where the pool is. Ideal, as we see, is between 7.2 and 7.6. I think our bodies sit at 7.4, so if you want the pool to kind of just match what the human body is, that's where you want to be, more in this orange color versus this pinkish purple color. So we're going to read our instructions on the pH down and see how much we need to add for the size of our pool in order to get it down to this level, okay? So I'm going to call that 8.0. And I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. All right, we got that rinsed out. We got our chlorine level and our pH level. Now we're going to test for alkalinity. Again, it's using the same pool water sample. We're going to fill just up to the dashed line this time. Okay, just up to the dashed line. Same as before, we're going to add, because we were over 1.5 parts per million on our chlorine, we got to add 1 drop of the solution number 4, this chlorine neutralizer. I'm going to swirl that around. Okay, now this one's a little different. So we're going to add 1 drop of solution number 5. That's this dark blue guy over here. It's going to turn our water blue. And then for the alkalinity test, it tells you, after we swirl that around, add solution number 3. That's the only one we haven't used yet. Add solution number 3, 1 drop at a time, counting the number of drops to change the color from blue to yellow. I'm going to multiply that by 10, and that's going to give us our alkalinity number. Okay, so again, pad and paper really helpful here to keep track of all this stuff. So it's blue right now. We want to see how many drops till we get it to turn yellow. Five, 6, drop 2 wax, another 7. It's wanting to turn, it's getting close. 8. There we go. Kind of more toward a clear there, so 9, that should do it. Yep, you can see that chemical reaction happens, it turns yellow. So it's kind of between 8 and 9. We'll call that 8.5. So again, we're multiplying by 10. So our alkalinity level is 85. The higher alkalinity, the more drops it's going to take to change that over. It's kind of what I gather from that test. So we got our numbers for chlorine, pH, and alkalinity. Chlorine looks good, okay. I might turn the chlorine generator down a little bit. It's set to 40% right now, and it's running at 3.0 after all that rain. It doesn't have to necessarily be that high. It just needs to be above between 1.0 and 3.0. So maybe I'll drop it down to, 30, 35%, and then I'll test it again after a couple days and see if I'm kind of maintaining more in that level. pH 8.0, we need to drop that pH a little bit. And then alkalinity is 85. Check the documentation again. I think it needs to be between 80 and 120, so we'll probably add just a little bit of alkalinity to the pool as well, kind of maybe get it up closer to 100, 110. Okay, so let's start with pH, okay? I'll meet you over by the pool. We're gonna get the pH down. All right, guys, now we're gonna add some of the pH down to the pool. Now, pH down, if you think about it, the lower the pH of something, the more acidic it is. So when you're adding something to bring the pH down, you're basically adding acid to the pool, okay? So this is one of the chemicals you really need to be careful of touching your skin or anything else. We don't add this directly to the pool water. We wanna mix it up in some water first. Whenever you're dealing with chemicals, you always add chemicals to water. You don't add water to chemicals, because if you put the acid in here and then hit it with the hose, that could spray right back in your face as it bounces out, okay? You wanna fill this about halfway, 3/4 with water, and then add your chemicals to that, then mix it around, and then kind of dilute it, and then we're gonna pour it around the pool. So I like this Clorox pH down because it dissolves pretty quick. Just whatever you use, make sure to read the instructions, know how big your pool is. Got a 20,000 gallon pool. It says for every 10,000 gallons, if your pH is at 8.0, we're gonna add 12 ounces. So we need to add 24 ounces. That's a 1.5 pounds. This is a 5 pound jug. Again, it doesn't have to be exact here, okay? But so I'm gonna, I used some of this last year. It's probably about this full. I'm gonna use, 1.5 pounds or whatever for the 5 pound. Kind of eyeball it, and then we'll test the pH again in a couple hours or tomorrow and kind of see how it looks. Okay, so I'm gonna fill this bucket with some water first. All right, we filled the bucket with some water. Careful, because sometimes there's some clumps and they still will drop in quick and can splash back at you. Make sure you have gloves that are chemical resistant gloves, not just regular old vinyl gloves. The acid can eat through those. Make sure they're chemical resistant gloves. And then just eye protection or sunglasses or something on, just in case you were to get something to splash back in your eye. So again, I'm gonna go for about 1.5 pounds of this acid mixed in with the water here. I use a painter stick or something to stir it up really well. And again, you wanna mix this up. Don't add it directly to the pool water. Those clumps could sink right to the bottom and eat right through your liner or your gunite or something else expensive. Get this mixed up nice and thorough. Just, again, watching your eyes, watching your skin. This is basically acid at this point. Keep the hose nearby. If you were to get it on your skin or on the concrete or anything else, you want to keep that nearby so you can rinse it off really quick. All right, that's pretty well incorporated. And kind of rinse that stick off. Set that aside, and then we're going to pour this kind of around the perimeter of the pool here. Just make sure there's nothing I can trip over. And then we're gonna rinse out our bucket. Okay, so that's it for pH. Gonna make sure the lid's on nice and tight. Put that away, and then we'll do alkalinity. All right, next we're gonna add our alkalinity increaser. Again, this is kind of the buffer to help keep the pH from swinging around too much on us, okay? So this, not as dangerous to use as a pH down, which is an acid, okay? This is an alkaline. From what I'm told, it's basically baking soda, baking soda or whatever. I know some people will use just straight baking soda in their pool. Get the real stuff, the pool stuff. It dissolves easier, and it's going to have the right amount of chemistry for what you need, and it's going to tell you right on the side how much you need to add, okay? That said, it's just always good practice to wear gloves, eye protection, anytime you're dealing with any chemicals in a pool, so you don't get complacent about it. That said, I looked at the side here. We were at 85. I want to get that up to about 105, so I'm kind of at that mid-range between 80 and 120 is where you want to be on your alkalinity. So it says for a 20,000 gallon pool, to raise it 20 parts per million, I need 6 pounds of this stuff, so definitely more than the pH down, okay? So again, we're adding chemicals to water, not water to chemicals, so it doesn't splash back in our face. I'm gonna fill this bucket back up and then we'll add this in. All right, we filled up our bucket about 2/3, 3/4 of the way, and we had 6 pounds of this, okay? Again, it doesn't have to be exact. I know that one of these scoops is about 1 pound. Stir it around again and do the same process as we did for the pH. Don't worry if it doesn't 100% dissolve in the water. It's still better than just adding it directly. And you definitely never add these types of chemicals directly to your skimmer baskets, okay? You don't want that straight acid going into your, going right into your salt system. All right, this stuff actually dissolves pretty fast. This is from Poolmate Alkalinity Increaser. All right, just gonna gently dump it in along the side here. And then we will rinse out our bucket. All right, so that took care of our pH and our alkalinity. It's gonna take a little while to kind of circulate through the system and even out, but we'll check them again here in a few hours and kind of see what kind of a difference we made. In the meantime, let's check our chlorine stabilizer levels. Usually there's still a little bit left from the last season, but we want to bring that up to where it needs to be so that we're not burning off all our chlorine with the UV light, especially as the days get a little hotter. All right, guys, last but not least, we're going to talk about cyanuric acid test. Okay, this is to test for how much stabilizer is in our pool already. And like I said, chlorine stabilizer is the last thing we add at the end of the pool opening process. That's what helps keep the chlorine from burning off. Now, typically, I just add some other chemicals. I would let those run for about 24 hours, test the water again, see if I needed to add just anything with pH or alkalinity before I did this. For the sake of time and to try to beat the rain that's coming for the next few days here again, I'm just gonna do it today, okay? But if you're doing it at home, add pH, give yourself a few hours to let it circulate, test it, add your alkalinity, give it a few hours, let it circulate, maybe the next day, do your cyanuric acid test for your stabilizer. Also, I backwashed the filter before I did anything today. I didn't show that because we've already been through that, but you wanna do that before you do all this, because once you add this, you don't want to backwash for at least 2, maybe even 3 days, because if you do, you're just going to send all this stuff right back out the waste drain. So this is the one chemical that we add directly to the skimmer basket. That's how it's instructed, okay? And I'll show you that after we do our test. But first we need to see how much stabilizer is still in the water from last year. I imagine it's not going to be much, and then we got to figure out how much we need to add to get it up to 30 parts per million is what they recommend. So to do that, you need a special test. This is not going to come with your standard pool testing chemicals and everything else. This is going to be a separate test you have to buy. Same brand, Pentair Rainbow testing supply is the same one I use for the other chlorine test we saw, the Rainbow brand. So this is called a cyanuric acid test. There's a separate little vial here. I'll clean this out before we get started. But basically how it works is you're going to add your pool water. We still got our sample from before. You're going to mix it up, let it sit for a certain amount of time, and then you basically have to look through and see at what point you can't see that black dot anymore. And based on how far up and down that is, it's going to tell you how many parts per million of stabilizer you have in your water, okay? So let me rinse this out, and then we'll go ahead and do that. All right, cleaned it out, okay? Following the instructions that come with the Rainbow test kit, it says you're going to fill to this line on the back of the stick here, line A with pool water, and you're going to fill the rest of the way with your reagent, the cyanuric acid. Okay, so let's fill first with the pool water. Put our gloves on since we're dealing with a chemical now. Went a little above, that's okay. All right, mix by moving the stick up and down 10 or 12 times, it says. All right, leave the test stick at the bottom position, allow the solution to set for about 2 minutes before continuing to test. So I'm gonna let it sit here for about 2 minutes. The water, if there is a lot of stabilizer or enough stabilizer, it's gonna get cloudier and harder to see. If there's not much, it's not gonna do much of anything. So let's give it 2 minutes and then we'll see how it looks. All right, it's been about 2 minutes here. Again, this is kind of a different type of test, but basically what it's gonna have us do now is look down through the top, all right? See if I can get an angle here for you. All right, and see if you can see the black dot. Okay, so I can't see it just right there. So we're gonna raise it up until we can see it. Okay, so now we can see that black dot. And then we're gonna lower it. See if I can get that in focus. We're gonna lower it until we can't see it anymore. Kind of disappears right about there. All right, so you can see we're kind of right between that 20 and 30 mark. So there's still a little bit of stabilizer in the water there. We would want it to disappear kind of right at the 30 there, okay? But we can definitely, I can still see it at the 30, so we need to add some more stabilizer. So I'm gonna say we're at about 25 or so. So we'll follow the instructions on the back of our stabilizer here. So we have a 20,000 gallon pool, so 16 is as high as they go, but to raise 10, which should be enough for us, we're gonna add 1.2 pounds. You know, since we didn't really need to raise it up 10, we just need, and this is a little lower pool, we'll split the difference and we'll still do it at about 1 pound and kind of see how that is. You can always test it again and you know, check it. You can always add more later. But we'll add about 1 pound today and then we'll check it again tomorrow and see how it's looking. All right, so we're here at the skimmer basket again. This is the only chemical that we're gonna add directly to the skimmer itself. I took the basket out, okay? And you can kind of see, let's see if I can get a shot down here. So that's where water's coming in and going down those holes. Now you don't want to dump all this in at the same time or it can clump up and clog up your system, which would be very, very bad news. So we're gonna add just a little bit of this at a time. All right, so I went back and looked at the instructions again, and really 30 is the minimum we want to be at, and we're at 25. So 20,000 gallon pool, if we want to raise it 15 parts per million, which will put us up around 40 and safely above 30. You said you really don't want it above 70 or 80. It could be just too much of this stabilizer in the pool. So we should be fine around 40, 45 and not have to be checking it every couple of weeks and adding more. Again, this is something you kind of do at the beginning and maybe halfway through the season. Gonna add 2 pounds of this. This is a 4 pound bag. I have about half of it left over from last year. So I'm just gonna put the rest of this in. Again, gloves on. Gonna do this nice and easy into the, make sure we got no big clumps here. Directly into the skimmer, okay? Just a little bit at a time. You're gonna let that kind of sink to the bottom and get sucked down. Again, if you poured all this in at once, it would clump up and almost form like cement in your pool lines, which would be very bad and very costly repair. So take your time with this, okay? You're gonna sit here for a little while, just adding a little bit at a time till you get all the amount in there. This is gonna go pretty much all the way through the system and sit in the filter for a while till it gets broken down. It takes a little while to get broken down, which is why you don't wanna backwash right after you do this. You're gonna lose all of it, okay? It's gonna kind of slowly get broken down in the filter and sit in there for a while and help keep our chlorine levels nice and even throughout the season. So I'm gonna slowly just add a little bit more of this at a time. It's gonna take a few minutes and then we'll be done with all our chemicals for today. You can see we're letting it circulate and kind of get sucked down there just a little bit at a time. And I'm gonna do about half of it at this skimmer and probably go over the other one and do the other half. I just like to kind of do half in one, half in the other for some reason, so it's not all of it going down one pipe if something were to happen. All right, guys, well, thanks for following along as we opened the pool the rest of the way these last 11 days. So didn't quite take 2 weeks, and actually probably would have gone a little faster if we hadn't had all the rain this past week. So anyway, if you like what you see, make sure to hit the like button. If you want to get more videos like this, go ahead and hit subscribe to Mad Backyard. And we'll go ahead and be putting out some more individual videos for each of the pool testing and opening segments we did. If you need a refresher, you can go back and check each of those. Other than that, we're just going to kind of keep the pool clean, keep the chlorine up, keep testing the water every week and hopefully get the temperature up so the family can enjoy it here in the next few days. Thanks a lot.